Hey, everyone! It's February 9th, and we are back for all things fringy. Whoop, whoop! I know this is really, really late, but Happy New Year to everyone. We didn't do anything in January because we knew we were going to have our lottery, which is happening tonight, Granville Island Brewery. So for those of you who are just tuning into what that means is that we get all the applications in and then we pull names. It's that kind of democratic, or we try to make it as much as we possibly can. And so we have 80 spaces today to fill up. We have 180 people who have applied. So it's kind of be very cool. So from 6 to 9 at the brewery. If you're interested still, I know there's still room. So communications@vancouverfringe.com. Whoop. I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. It is an honor to live, work, and now do a podcast on these territories. Today we have the lovely Johnny Trinh, who is here. Yay! Camera, whatever. And we're going to be speaking about, him, Vancouver Poetry House, lots of things. In the meantime, I just want to hit a couple of things that I think are really relevant. First of all, of course, Black History Month. Yay! I mean, you know, it's kind of odd that we have this Black History Month in this particular way, but we live in these times, my friend. So I would suggest that there are many ways in which you can hook into this. There's a great book, podcast, and I think another series called 1619, which kind of tells about the historical nature of the slave trade and North America and politics and the meeting and of that trade with North America. Specifically in this case, it's down in the States, but of course this could be applied to anybody in terms of how those roots and how those people were affected. And so yeah, I'd say go into that. If you want to actually look into donating to something, I do the Hogan Society, Hogan's Alley Society. There used to be a very big Black population in the just adjacent to Strathcona in the Chinatown area, which was kind of wiped out in the 60s because of the Georgia Viaduct. Interesting. Anywho, they are trying to keep the spirit alive and the history alive of Black Canadians in Vancouver. Hogan's Alley Society, I know you can look it up, and there's and you can make a donation if you want to their good work. But there's tons of other places in which I would say, if you can, insert yourself financially. Everybody needs to move forward and do their work and create great spaces for the history and for art. Tons of different artistic places out there in which you can actually create, make a donation. So I suggest Google the sucker and you'll find a whole bunch of people who can do that too. Because we shouldn't just be, it's a living thing, history. It doesn't just exist in one time. It's ones and things that keep on infiltrating where we are now and affecting where we are now, and get involved in the conversation is what I would say. So we have the lottery, we have this. So we are, I think the one thing I was going to say was like, I want you to, that we're going to have a whole bunch of new people that are going to be coming on board on the Fringe, and we're going to post it on our website, which we're very excited about as we move towards the festival, which seems to be like coming down very, very quickly, even though it's February. I can't believe this. Last year I didn't know, you know, and now I know. So it's a little crazy. And I would just like to have a shout out to Sophia Sanford, who is our, the one that is also our social media for us. She has a new EP coming out. I'm going to ask her to post it on our Facebook and our social media channels so that everybody knows. So we're going to have a whole bunch of different things that are going to come through in February for the festival and otherwise. So just wanted to put that on everybody's radar because we're back and we're here. It is 2023 and the festival is happening September 7th to 17th. Woohoo! Oh, still applying for money for it. So, that's a good thing. If you want to donate to us, you know you can. VancouverFringe.com. There's a whole donation page on there, or ways in which you could actually just get involved with the Fringe as well. We're looking for volunteers. We're looking for billeting. Lots of stuff coming up. So we know you love us. So, we're happy if you share the love back to us. And of course, we're so excited that we're going to be doing another festival here, very close to Granville Island, and with the delightful people in the room here, which are Marvin and Ken, Burkeville Productions, in the beautiful Leap Creative Studios. We'll be back again this year, which we're happy about, as one of the many venues that are coming up. So I think that's everything. If you need to contact me at all, you can get to executive director at vancouverfringe.com. I'm not going anyplace. So thanks all. Okay, so now, Johnny.
Hey, what's up?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
It's been a really inspiring day.
Good.
I just had an incredible morning meeting with Kegan Go and learned so much about the amazing work that he's doing in poetry, spoken word, and playwriting and cinematography. So it's always great to meet your colleagues, your contemporaries, who are also your predecessors doing the work, and to see that resonance. It's been a really inspiring morning, and I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yes.
I know Kegan from, I did I forget what it's called, Michael Parks. It is a thing where they match up, it'll probably come as I talk about, but my brain is on pause. I match up musicians and writers, and then you work with them for a week, and then you have a showing at the end of that week. And I did that about, pre-pandemic, so it must have been 2018-ish. And Kegan was one of the people that was
amazing. I've been doing a lot of initiatives like that as well. I've been part of a few music and spoken word together. It's been great. I want to hear more about later.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I always ask this question. I asked you before, if you wouldn't mind answering the question. So I am from Vancouver. I was born here. So I always ask, where were you born?
Okay. And I want to just quickly toss in there. We just passed it, but you're not quite late. Happy Lunar New Year to everyone out there. I say this because I am a New Year's baby.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I just turned 42 on Tuesday.
Well, congratulations. You made it.
Yes, we're here. We're done. This is it? Okay. And I was born in Kitchener, Waterloo, Ontario. And it was a snowy New Year's Day. My mother slipped down a flight of stairs, and I came out 2 months early.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and so that's where I was born, and I believe that we're on a podcast and recording this, and it's part of the acknowledgements, right? I do believe that we were predominantly on the land of the Anishinaabe, the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the people in Mississauga, the Credit, and that's kind of the region, and that extends into Toronto, where I actually really called home for my kind of blooming, my debut or whatever, right? My blossoming. And so spent a lot of time there. And then I'm just going to keep talking about my journey.
Yeah, great. How did you all get to Vancouver? That kind of thing.
And so I kind of was living in Ontario, moving from city to city, all over Ontario, really. And at the time, I was trying to make it in the acting world and do film and television, all those things. And this is before Crazy Rich Asians and just after Joy Luck Club. So not quite a lot of things for me. And I was telling this funny story of connecting with a lot of agencies in Toronto. I had a bunch of agents, but a few big ones said things like, there aren't very many Asians, but they're not very good. So I'm like, what? So I was trying to figure out, if you can't do, then go to school. And so I ended up going to do my master's, my MFA in interdisciplinary studies in theater, creative technology, music, spoken word, and that was in Regina. I'm Treaty 4 land, and then eventually continue the migration over to here on our lovely, beautiful space here in Vancouver. Yeah.
Oh wow. That's a really interesting. Okay, so I'm just going to back up a little bit here. Yeah. So did you mostly go up in Kitchener?
I'd say so, into my teens there, yeah. And then, but we were always connected, so we went back and forth to Toronto a lot. And I lived in Toronto for about, on off for 7 years or so, yeah.
Right. Yeah. And did you always know that you were a writer, even though you were trying to be an actor? How did you come to those sort of realizations about yourself?
I always knew that I was a storyteller, whatever that means. And I just had a lot of energy. So I did a lot of music and playing musical instruments and singing and performing and doing theater primarily. And what actually got me into my master's degree was I wrote a play in spoken word text. And it was, and it won a very small award. It was such a new chapter for me of sorts. But then when I got to Regina, a local artist friend, colleague, new friend, invited me, hey, come to a poetry slam. I'm like, oh, sure, I'll check it out. Sure, right? So I go there, and it's in like Wascana Park. Oh no, it was actually just right downtown, right by the Globe Theater, where it's in the little plaza there. And I pull out this play. I'm like, oh, I can read something. Sure, right? It's a family event, tons of kids. And mine is full on like an R-rated adult talking about orgasm and talking about all these things. And like, and I performed it, but I had really positive feedback. And that's how I kind of got started into the spoken word, like truly into the spoken word realm and the community there, and started performing locally, started winning slams. That's a very small microcosm of spoken word, but that's kind of where a lot of us start. Started representing provincially, nationally, and kind of got established that way. So to answer your question though, I realized later on that, I used to write poetry.
Right.
And I started writing since grade 9.
Wow. Okay.
And what's really interesting is my mother hates this, but my mother writes poetry.
Oh.
But she never shared it with me. We just found while we're moving and things, finding all these books of the writing. And so it's funny because they always thought of arts as being what they call the left hand.
Yes.
So finish your science degree, go do these things in the right hand and, make money. And so for me to really just live on this side was always a challenge. And so she would say things like, why did you learn all the worst things from me? So anyway, so I started writing in grade 9. No, I was writing before, but poetry in this form manifested then and kept going. Yeah.
So that's a good question. So in terms of writing poetry, were you really disciplined about it? Did you have a journal that you wrote in all the time, or did you were just one of those people that, as it came to you, you wrote it down and it just kind of accumulated from your teenage years?
And I'd say that I wasn't disciplined in a way that I was every morning I'll do my pages or something like that.
Yeah.
But I will say that there was a lot to write about. And I had some very amazing outlets and creative writing teachers who fostered and gave space to do that. So yeah, I had a lot of angst and trauma as a child. So there was lots of novels and journals and diaries of just filling up piano benches and closets. So so I wrote a fair bit, but then I stopped.
Right.
Once, as high school progressed and I became much more of a performer, and then moving into theater school and university, it was really focused on just performing. And I'd say that that's a challenging thing. There's often this dichotomy within spoken word, especially in the slam community, where you go to festivals and people are like, I'm a writer first, I'm a performer first. And I always felt like I was a performer first.
Right.
And because without too much ego, people are like, you can make a phone book sound good. I'm like, sure. I think it's relative because I had this training of
you might want to tell everybody what exactly a phone book is now.
You can make a Yelp review sound good.
Yeah.
And I think that the reality is that I had 20 years of performance training to know how to vocalize and have breath support and articulate and orate, right? And so I think I always challenge folks to say, well, this art form, spoken word, is a unification of these things, writing and specifically speaking and conversing. So anyway, that's my soapbox of the day, I guess.
No, it's very good. I mean, I think I was similar in the fact that I'd always found writing not easy, but natural. It was something that was I was very tuned to as a kid, and got a lot of different kinds of English classes where they broke down sentence structure and stuff. Still don't know any of that, but because I could write fairly well, and then I put that away. I thought, I'm a performer. That's what I do, and I kind of did a bit when I was in school, but it wasn't like in university, but it wasn't until like a few years later that I thought, oh no, I really want to write. And honestly, part of that was because I wanted to tell stories that were interesting to me. And I wasn't, certainly as a young woman, I wasn't finding that in what I thought I wanted to do, which was perform more. So, yeah.
I love what you're saying there in the sense of sentence structure and writing. I remember having a very pivotal meeting with my supervisor. I had no idea why, when I was doing my master's in my first year, that English was one of my disciplines in terms of my interdisciplinary degree. And my prof said, well, do you ever want to teach 14th century lit? I'm like, no, I don't. No, I don't. No. And it's like, then that should not be on your list. And I sometimes think of how poetry has so much more freedom, you know? Absolutely. There's forms. You can write a Petrarchan sonnet or some form of abecedarian or whatever else. You know, these are these forms you can do, but there's freedom to change things. Like I remember having a conversation with Joseph Tony Danderand, right? Amazing, amazing, right?
Yeah, lovely. He came to last year's festival, did a little workshop for us. Yeah.
Yeah, and his books, like his work is so beautifully contained. Like each line on a page can be a self-containing story. But his use of run-on sentence, which is essentially the entire book, this happened and this happened and then this happened and then and it works, right? Yeah. And so I love the idea that poetry has been in this form, this way for us, gives us freedom to mess it up and break the rules and make new rules. Hey,
yeah, for sure. I was talking to a poet whose name shall be, just in case he doesn't agree to what I'm just going to say.
Okay.
And I was going to say that I was he sends me poems as emails, right? Which for a while I did not understand what he was doing. Like I didn't understand what I was listening to, because usually emails are like, I need this, can you provide that? How about this? Who are you? All that kind of stuff. And he was doing it in the form of a poem, so you actually had to read everything, as one sometimes does it when in an entire meal where you're just going, okay, what do you need? Like, you're trying to do that. And I think perhaps that might be his sort of reason to do that. But also, I think that's how his brain works, is that he thinks that way. But I thought it was very funny because, I used probably a very old-fashioned word to describe the way his poetry laid out on a page, which was like concrete poetry, kind of like it looked like it sound. And he was like, and I was like, oh dear, I know. But all I was saying was that it was like how he says the words, how he comes across is how he writes and he structures it. How his basically I could see his brain functioning as he was doing it. It wasn't quite the right word, but you know what I'm trying to say.
I totally do. I think one of my amazing supervisors, her name's Rebecca Caines. I'm going to name drop all the places because you do it, right?
Yeah.
Incredible improviser, an incredible, just empowering teacher, just amazing. She often talks about performance as research.
Right.
When we go to the academy and critically look at things and whatever, right? Why can't the work itself simply be the interpretation or the message or the medium that you are delivering what you've learned or how you want to communicate, right? And it was really empowering because sometimes as artists we get stuck in these bureaucratic, systemic, I must write this formal way to get this grant, that report, or whatever, you know? And one of my dear mentors, so my poet handle is Johnny D. Trinh. My middle name is David. And I added the D because really, I remember I was in the streets of Montreal. It was a snowy day. It was the Canadian Festival of Spoken Word at the time. And I'd gone to this amazing, but really challenging, really angering workshop led by the incredible Kai Cheng Tom and Janice Lee on, safety and poetry. And I was just in a moment of it. And suddenly this person, this human comes in, this goddess floats in, and it is like, we're talking just into the conversation, like, art is not safe. Like, no, art is not safe. How do we make safety and be healthy as artists in this realm? And it was Sherry D. Wilson.
Oh, of course,
and,
yes.
Yeah, and she has become a mentor, and she's become like family to me. And her emails are always, not always, but most of the time, an E. Cummings testimony. Like, it's a song and it's writing. It's beautiful. And it reminds me, like, okay, our art, our practice matters. It can be, and it's worthy of being as it is, right? So that's wonderful. Yeah,
that's interesting. You know, full disclosure, Johnny put together what would you call it? Is it an evening of spoken word, or at my old job?
Yes, yes.
And Sherry G came, and incredibly remarkable group of human beings that were on the stage anyway. But it was so lovely to see, the age representation, in terms of all her wealth of knowledge, and then all the newbies that were on stage, and people sort of in the middle. It was great. It was really great.
Thank you, and thank you for that. That's one of the first times I got to meet you, and we were talking about how you had an amazing show with Shane Koizan, who's also amazing, performed there. And I was like, I'm following Shane's footsteps. I hope I bring audience. and that show was, it was called Fever Rising.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And it was myself, Sherry D, Stephen Charles, amazing.
Yes.
Oh gosh. And of course the effervescent Jillian Christmas.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah. She's doing amazing work right now too, right? Her book is done so well, and
there's a person who glows from the inside out.
Right?
Yes.
Just
Yeah.
And thank you for talk about representation. It was a beautiful collaboration of intergenerationality, intercultural, connection and dialogue. We all got to work together, and truly, thank you. You've done so much work in creating spaces. No, let me just shine. Cory Philley. Cory Philley has done so much work in creating spaces that allow for the connection to happen, right? Especially during the pandemic as well. Like at the start of it, we're still in it. Please wear a mask, right? So it's like, and wash your hands. So yeah, but thank you. Yeah, it was stunning and a beautiful chance to, at first time, do that for a new audience. Because I was doing a lot of shows in like East Van and small pockets, but to be in that space and the feedback, it was resounding. So thank you so much.
Oh no, it was really delightful to have everybody there. It's always great when you're, I also love this as creating a lovely container for people to do the work that they need to do inside of that, and that being the space where that is safe and everything. Because it was interesting what you were saying about art being safe. I think the difference between, or perhaps I would interpret that as creating safe spaces in which art can take place, but art can be dangerous. Right? The art itself can be dangerous or provocative or whatever you want to do, what you want to call about it, because it should be, because it's also reflecting all of humanity, and sometimes we're dangerous and unpredictable and odd. But I think art itself, but the spaces themselves in which we create that and are able to play and be innovative and question and have conversations and be problematic and all those other things, are places that I think need great, lovely, round, padded boundaries that people can bounce against.
It's I feel like I'm like busting out my thesis here from my degree on autoethnography. It's I think about the work of Lillian Allen, right? Speaking of, being and looking right to camera, so many cultures across this planet have a history of oral tradition. We often associate it with the indigenous nations here, with oral storytelling and history. Within Chinese and many Asian, Southeast Asian, among that diaspora, there is a method of learning where it was always like call and response, answer, repeat, let me dictate and copy. And so plagiarism was a different context back in that teaching style. But spoken word in its contemporary context is rooted in Blackness and Black culture. It's just that this is just what we understand as like from deaf poetry and whatnot. Like it's a very real thing, coming from and interweaving with like the history of hip hop and whatnot. I think about Lillian Allen's work in her way of occupying the academy and entering that space, and just occupying space and what you were talking about, in that padded circle, whatever. But I also think about, and I talk about how art, especially theater, and in this way spoken word as a performance context, is both the medium and the vocabulary, right? So when we talk about theater and mask, right, the magic of the mask, it can shield you, you feel it, you connect, and you move back, very Grecian, if you will, I suppose, right? Yeah,
I guess so. Yeah,
and it's funny because I had this discussion with Eric Royce Miller, another amazing theater maker and arts community person, talking about catharsis. There's a lot of stuff, if you go in like deaf poetry or button poetry or any of the poetries, where you see a lot of people sharing their like heart stories, right? Mm-hmm. And some of those are trauma, some of those are not. But there is an active catharsis there. Mm-hmm. But and so I was like, oh, catharsis, that's because I think of like personal catharsis as a performer not to be the thing. It doesn't serve the audience. It doesn't really hold a container for them because it's really self-absorbed in that moment. Which is fine if that's what you want to do. But then Eric was like, but let's think about catharsis in an earlier historical context where it was that through this mask, through the performance, the audience feels with you and releases with you, right? And so I think that in terms of that padded and that safety and creating that, holding that space I think it's important for an artist to know who's in the room. Maybe not personally, intimately,
Yeah.
but know that there's a room and that you live and you're breathing, you're voicing something, and there's a relay happening, and you have to take care of that audience, and vice versa.
Yeah.
That the audience comes in knowing to hold space for you to share what you must. And so that's where that safety is needed, and that's how it manifests.
Well, getting down to interesting more, the nits and grits of like being a person that performs, is I often think about the audience, and I think it's true, is that they're another character in the space, right? They're the energy flowing back and forth for you. They're the ones that heighten the experience, obviously, because it's different than saying those words by yourself in a room by yourself, right? Right. So it's like you are, and you can be transformed yourself as a performer, even if you've said those words 1,000 times, by just having the presence of an audience there, because you receive it differently and they change it. And they, we, in a traditional theater scenario and in poetry and any kind of performative experience, you're practicing your heck off, the heck off to get the exact words at the right time and the timing and blah, blah, blah. And it's an interesting thing to be in that space where you think it, like it's like it's in your body, but it can only really be there for me anyway, is once I have that exchange, and then to allow, people talk about catharsis, yes, but I think it's the word I would use as more like transformation. There's something transformative about the experience.
Right.
It may not be satisfying in the sense of resolved, but it's transformative in the sense of knowing something different, feeling something different, reflecting, like seeing your own humanity reflected up there. Release. Sometimes, I think lots of times with theater for me, sometimes it's a release of an emotion that's around a particular idea, like, shame or fear or pain or all those things. And I think it's one of those, I think it's so much more, and I struggle with catharsis only in this sense that I think it's been overused and overtaxed, and sometimes you can get a bit of a catharsis, and sometimes it'll come back, like, that feeling, that trauma, or that release will come back in a different form later. You know what I mean? I don't think we're never always done, is all I'm really trying to say.
100%. I remember I was just talking about this. I quote this person a lot. Like, obviously, our Canadian poet laureate, like Louise Bernice Half, who was doing a workshop with Louise, and she was saying to us youngins, you come up here and you share things, and that's great. But if you are sharing a trauma and you go back to a life where the trauma is still happening, then you are not, there's no transformation, there's no healing. You're just re-triggering, you're reliving that thing, right? There must be some form of transformation. And I also think that, like, we think of the work of like Bill Bissett, or we think of the work of a good dear friend, Johnny McCrae, or the work of Ian Keteku, who, inject, or Andre Prefontaine, like, talk about humorous and dark humor, where it can be funny and weird and completely like, it seems like it's over there, but it's something you're feeling all the things, right?
Yeah.
So I remember I was leading a master class of sorts, a workshop in Victoria with an esteemed panel of coaches. And we had one, I don't say age young, I say voice young, a younger poet who was talking about, sharing these stories and saying, I don't want anyone managing my trauma. I'm like, you're totally right. No one should. I have no right to do that. Right? But if we think about performance, we think about, what are we framing here? What is our agreement? So in this way, if you want to share your story in this way for you, that's fine. But if your goal is to connect to the audience, if your goal is to bring in theatricality and an aesthetic, which doesn't mean good or bad, it just means a style or of a look, then we can help you with that. We can say, nope, that did not land. Let's how can we frame so you still feel agency and ownership of your story while also achieving your goal. What's your goal, right?
Yeah.
I know many very esteemed, like Griffin award-winning, all the award-winning, right?
Yeah.
Grant-receiving legends who do teach and say, you write for yourself. I don't perform for anyone else. I perform for me, and that's totally cool. There's still that relationship, though, right?
Yep.
And so there's no but. And there's still that relationship, and sometimes I think folks who are coming up and learning don't know that yet. And so they get caught up in the I'm just going to do me and here and it's beautiful. It's raw, right?
Yeah.
And but that doesn't last. How do we get that endurance and
Well, and also, I mean this in the kindest way possible, is it doesn't build resiliency for what you need to be doing, right? As an artist, because I think if you're always laying your vulnerability out without, this is not the right word. It's almost like as artists, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say we manipulate the work, right? We take it, we create it, we manipulate it, we pare it down, we build it up, we do all those things with it. And in doing so, even that is a transformation from the actual rawness of whatever the story that was. Especially, I would say, things that are very obviously coming out of a personal experience, which I would say, when you're talking about spoken word or you're talking about slam poetry, often that's exactly where it's coming from. It's like an immediate experience that's being now translated into a performative form, right?
Can we say that again? Can we just loop that in the podcast for everyone to hear in the back? That's absolutely. I think also within autobiographical and autoethnographic performance and storytelling, and in many of these forms, there is this value set of saying, were you there? Did you live it? Is it to make sure you're not appropriating stories?
Yes,
right?
Yes, yeah.
And that's a whole other thing that may be another podcast someday. But podcast series, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think though that as creators, as storytellers, though these are our stories, no one is an island, So I intentionally will change facts. I will change names. I will change things. The reality of the emotional journey, the reality of the impact of the actions in the story are completely true.
Yeah.
But I will stand by I'm not stealing anyone's story. I'm protecting the people that I care about so that so that it doesn't blow back on them. There's been many times in my life where, so I went to the first queer wedding convention in Toronto.
Is it just a second. Is it a convention for queer people to do the same things that het people do, by China and things like that? Or is it a convention where everybody just gets married?
No, it was to go and choose flowers and get cakes and do all the things, right? Explore this thing because
if I went over there, I just had this moment of everybody in one big room just getting married. Okay, yes.
Anyway, so I'm there and looking younger and cuter. And
how is that possible, Johnny?
Oh, thank you, thank you. But So there, and we get followed by a reporter and all these things. And I asked them to not print my last name, and they don't listen. They print my last name. But then we end up on, like, as a cover image in this article for this very large newspaper. And at first I was like worried, but I'm like, you know what? Honestly, my family doesn't read the newspaper. It's fine, right?
Yeah.
It was like after the Oscars or something. It was some big award show. So it was everywhere.
Oh.
And so the blowback and the harm that it caused my nuclear family, it was very difficult and it was not good.
Right.
So no, I'm like, no, I will protect what I need to protect. I have relationships, the things to care about, right? And so I remember, are we able to talk about other shows here? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I was able to go to this reading artist panel for forgiveness from the Arts Club.
Right, yep.
And here was talking about how, it was a lot of research, a lot of like Laramie Project-esque, like real-time, real people, let's create a play from these personal histories, but saying that intentionally he included a scene about the processing up up by where the P&E is.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And though that wasn't directly part of this specific family's narrative, it was important because of historical context and everything else, right?
Yep.
So yeah, we have to take and be creative and manipulate. So to protect ourselves, to find the truth in that moment. Yeah.
Well, and to sometimes like to offer the larger picture of a particular situation. In this case, a Japanese internment
Yes.
in World War II. Here specifically in Vancouver, I think it was placed in Vancouver, or at least on the West Coast.
Yeah.
Because I think those things are important to note. Like I have certainly written things from stories that were family related or my personal experience of something or anything like that. But I've also had situations where people have said about other things where, you think, I hope that theater replacement, if you're out there, I love you. This isn't anything about you. There was the situation that happened with theater replacement where a suitcase full of, I think it was photos were found. And so Jamie Long, one of the artistic directors there, was making a show on it. And long story short, it happened that they were able to find out whose suitcase it was. So it changed the narrative about who owns that. How can one do that? Not because theater replacement was doing anything wrong, but because it opened up the suitcase of the conversation about who owns what and, how do you say things and how do you protect people's privacy. And I think those are really valid choices to say, I choose to do this. I choose to tell the story. I don't choose to give you everything about the story or everything about me in the content of the story. I think it's also important that it's then going back to the work, like looking at the work. What is important? It makes you actually ask yourself, I think, what is important to say here? What is the subtext of this conversation? What is the real stuff I need to say? Because it makes you be kind of ruthlessly truthful. It has to be, because it doesn't have to be, but in the best case scenario, it is, because you're wanting to distill down the intention, the emotion, what that exchange exactly is, right? What's the why, as I would call it, and why, and then what is the craft of that why, right? Yeah.
I love that. It makes me think of, why now?
Yeah.
What's the urgency? What are the stakes?
Yeah, exactly.
Like good old Uta Hagen. Let's go. And that's very true. Like I think I talk about that a lot with artists now, because I feel like, and this is obviously a generalization, right?
Yeah.
Gross generalization, where sometimes people feel they need to pour everything out, and it makes you reframe what specificity means.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Because specificity isn't like, I need to know that, that post or that light in the corner was 33 centimeters or something, like,
Yeah.
It's more like, what specific facts will help shape and derive the story. I think that's actually how I approached, that was actually my personal revelation as an actor. on set because I was fresh out of theater school and I wasn't booking very much, barely anything at all. And you absolutely can write off saying, oh, it was racialized, it was racist, because it was, and that's fine. But also I knew that going into these auditions, I was still thinking like I was in school.
Right.
I was worried about did my placement of my voice sound right? Did I hit that note correctly? Was I flat? Was I doing any of these things, right? And then one day I was literally working retail in my store and it just hit me. I'm like, oh, my teachers aren't here anymore.
Yeah.
No one's grading me. My job is do I tell this story? Do I deliver it? And literally the next day I booked. Yeah. And I was like, oh, so thank you. Okay, I gotcha. I heard you. Yeah. Right? And and that's the same thing I think about when one of my other many roles in this world, in this coast, is I'm a coach for TEDx Surrey. It's one of the, I think, largest West Coast TEDx series. And, we're working with non-speakers, non-performers to do a talk on any of their experts. And these are all like the top of their fields, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, right now we're rehearsing where you're learning about diction, you're learning about articulation, you're learning about breath support. But on the day of, none of that matters. Yeah. Your only mission, it doesn't matter what you look like, doesn't matter the lighting, none of that. What matters is, are you delivering the core of the story? What's the most important thing here, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is a good segue into the many lives of Johnny Trinh. Okay. So, part of the reason that you're here today, because we we know each other, obviously, and we like each other and we want to talk to each other. Yeah. But the other part of this is that you are a person who wears multiple hats. Mm-hmm. We started to talk about Vancouver Poetry House, which you are, is the artistic director?
I am the artistic director now, yes.
Yes. Which I'd love to talk about, and also how we are currently talking about how that can be part of an experience at the Fringe this year, which is going to be cool. Mm-hmm. And I want you to talk about that, but I just, in a brief sentence that you can be run on and not take a breath in, what are all the things that you actually do right now that you have named thing to it? Go ahead.
Where's my bio? Okay. My bio says, Johnny D. Trinh is an interdisciplinary community-engaged artist with practices in spoken word, music, and theater, and film and media or something. And so I actually talking to Kagan this morning, community engagement is part of my art practice. Gathering people. If we talk about like relational aesthetics or whatever, Rebecca, my supervisor, is like, theater people have been doing it since time. The idea of gathering and sharing stories is really important to me. So I do a lot of, I've been very blessed to do a few artist residencies. Mm-hmm. I was probably most transformed when I was the artist in residence at formerly the John Hart Society, now the Connective. Mm-hmm. And I'm currently the writer in residence at the Moberly Art Center, working with a lot of amazing seniors in storytelling. And I am the artistic director of Vancouver Poetry House. I'm also the artistic founder of Stage to Page Performance Society, where we take contemporary play development methodology, reverse engineer it, so that we can help spoken word poets get published. Oh, so we bring in, it's really cool. So this is my 30-second pitch here. So we bring in like a director, a dramaturg, other musicians, and we bring in like skilled workshop actors who know how to pick up text and read it. Because oftentimes as spoken word poets, we write for ourselves, write notations for myself. But then what does it mean when, with all blessing and love, a cis hetero white woman teacher says, I want to read your very queer Asian play to my class and let's look at it and talk about Asian Heritage Month or...
Don't mock me. Okay. Okay. Yes. Okay.
Right. Anyway, but it's not mockery. It's the reality. It's like, okay, so I am so moved that you want to do that. Please pay me. Yes. But also, like, what does it mean when it's on a different tongue? And so, what does it mean when when speaking is so part of our practice that it's now on a text, right? Yeah. And so, for some people, it's the first time they get to hear the words read by somebody else or performed by somebody else and interpreted differently,
Interesting.
Right? So we had our first live one at Versus last year. So the Versus Festival Words is the flagship festival run by Vancouver Poetry House. And I had Vera Hilly, Kim Morto,
oh my God,
C.R. Avery, and Leo Johnson, and Crystal Kieran, and Jamie Mack, who are the top of the top of the top, right? So this is a gift. Like, let me just take this, and we had Leslie Stark and Lindy Nolte as the poets. So they brought in poems, and this one was about music. So it's like for a lot of poets who want to incorporate music, this is what the workshop feels like. Two completely different pitches.
Yeah.
Veto and Kim Wardle brought in a lot of like soundscape and like cinematography, and CR and Leo brought in like, let's make a theme song or let's do whatever. Everyone was crying. It was the most beautiful thing ever. It was incredible. So those are kind of the things I really deeply value as an artist, the passing of knowledge and the listening. I was, with absolute respect and reverence, knowing that tagline, being a voice for the voiceless, is part of like a civil rights, human rights movement from like, the time, like 70s, 80s, 90s, and whatever. I really challenge that. I think that, for so many of us who have been silenced for so long, they tried, we kept talking. So for folks like yourself and myself who are in leadership roles and producing roles, it's about creating platforms where these stories are amplified, but people will listen. Let's bring the system changers to come in and listen to make that change happen. So anyway, that was one long run-on sentence. I took 3 breaths. So there you go.
That was a pretty good one.
Yeah.
2 things.
Yeah.
When is that festival? Is it happening again this year?
Yes.
Did we just miss it? When is that happening?
National Poetry Month is happening, and the Versus Festival Awards happens from April 19th until April 29th.
Okay.
10 days, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
And where can they go to find out about that?
Just go to VancouverPoetryHouse.com.
Okay.
And we're still building everything. We're still planning everything, but continual updates there. And we're on all the things, Instagram, Facebook, whatnot. So we have some amazing poets coming in. We have Randall Ajay, Ontario Poet Laureate, coming in and doing so much for the community out in Toronto, for the Black community nationally, and just doing such amazing work. We have Louise Bernice Haff is coming, and that's great. Yeah, and it's and the theme actually this year is gathering found family back around the table. Because as you mentioned, we kind of alluded to, not especially, across this country, there have been a lot of social ruptures, a lot of community reckonings of saying you can't run this way anymore, right? And a lot of harm and a lot of separation and estrangement. And I think that through the isolation, we really need to return. And so a big part of the festival is to bring people back in, and we're having a lot of dialogue on how do we build community and how do we reshape community, So,
And also I think we were talking about too, and thank you for articulating that so well, is I think we're really talking about too is like having those kind of authentic relationships that really, I would say, the ruptures that occurred are ruptures that were there.
Yes.
We just didn't have anything to plaster over them anymore, right? There was no, the busyness of our lives or the whatever of our lives did not allow that to happen. And, people had to sit, everybody had to sit in what was really occurring in front of them, I think that that's, by the way, the thing that you said about stage to page, we have to do that, I think, in the Fringe. I think that's one of the things that we need to do. Thank you. That's just, we had to come up with that. My question for you is, how long is, I'm going to be really down to brass tacks, how long has Vancouver Poetry House been around? And what would you say now, how long have you been running it? And what do you say now is like your focus? You've explained it a little bit, I think, with all the other things you've said, but maybe you could be a little bit more.
Oh gosh, I feel like I'm like in like a history test.
Okay. Oh God.
No,
okay.
It's okay. It's all good. It's good. I know most of the answers. You're gonna
give yourself a good B+ before you start.
Right? Yeah. Totally. No more straight A's, Mom. Sorry. There's a bit. I'm gonna say there's a bit of amorphousness.
Okay.
Vancouver Poetry House has been around for time and started since the 90s.
Correct.
Yeah. And like, I remember, we're actually this is important to say anyway. So currently, we've returned to in-person programming, and one of our like flagship programs, of course, is the Vancouver Poetry Slam, which happens every Monday night at Community Pizza. It's incredible. You got to come. The food's amazing, and the poetry is also amazing.
Where's Community Pizza?
Community Taps and Pizza is at Commercial and just north of Grant. It's right by the park.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
It's right by the Britannia Community Center. Okay.
Yep.
And Mikey and the team there have been so welcoming and so amazing. And the poets have come back, you know?
Yes, great.
But for about 20 years before that, more than 20 years, we were at the Café du Soleil.
Oh,
right? And
gosh.
obviously, yeah. And so that was a deep, deep loss for us. But I mean, since the start of the pandemic, we weren't quite there anyway. So to answer your questions, we've been around for about 20 some years.
Café du Soleil has closed or is closing, right?
It has closed. And I think I see renovations. I'm not sure what's happening there, but that institution is now released into the ether. So yeah, it's Vancouver Poetry House has been around for decades, and I've only been in this role for about 6 months.
Wow.
Wait, maybe 6 months, maybe 7 months, maybe. So I'm very, very brand new. I've been involved with the organization though since 2016.
Okay.
I was a multi-time finalist at the Canadian Individual Poetry Slam. Hey, I never won, so whatever. I have been. I've won. I've been on the Vancouver team that did the national team slam for a while, but I've actually also been a guest curator and the Canadian Individual Poetry Slam tournament director multiple times. So I've done a long history with them for a few years, and really exciting is that this past year at the 2022 Canadian Individual Poetry Slam, Eddie Laerte from Hamilton in Toronto won and went on to win the international. In Brazil.
Wow, I did not know that.
There you go. Now you do.
Now I do.
An amazing poet. Please book Eddie, and hopefully bring him back to Vancouver sometime soon. So my goal with Vancouver Poetry House is as follows. What you said earlier about rupturing was really poignant to me. It just really hit me pretty hard. I'm like, wow, that's why you're amazing. Though we had to sit with the ruptures needed to happen. Mm. And so now the healing needs to happen, right? And growth needs to happen. Did I just lose my thought? I think I just totally lost my train of thought. Give me a moment here.
That's all right.
Yes, here it is. Yeah, it's back. I can't speak highly enough about the team. Like, Tavana Spilius is our slam coordinator. Alex is our volunteer coordinator, and Colleen Brown are the most amazing general manager I've ever met, like I've ever had a chance to work with. They kept the program going, even hybrid and online, you know? But for so many organizations, whether it's VPH or I think same with the Fringe and Push and everything out there, we were trying to survive. Mm. And now that I'm here, because I actually didn't have an artistic director for about a year, we can do more than survive. We can dream bigger now. Mm-hmm. Let's dream about succeeding in a different way, because those band-aids don't always work anymore, right? We now have to actually suture things up and let's get going, right? And so my goal is to grow. I know that's ambitious, but I think that for us, it's time for us to really, in a very salty, shady way, which I'm totally going to be because I'm a human being. I remember I was, I had the privilege of being at the Arts and Society conference at Emily Carr before they moved, and it was hosted here. And I was walking through these schools at Emily Carr and SFU and UBC too. I saw all these young artists who are dabbling with spoken word and entering that practice and making themselves interdisciplinary, which is fantastic. But there was no I'm like, did anyone coach you on this poem? How come this is already published? This needs some work. Let's work, the fact that there wasn't the same valuing, again, speaking to the work that Sherry D does and Billy Nickerson does and Lynn Allen does and people in the academy doing and folks from the BAM Center, I really want to help spoken word in this region return to its occupy space. Yeah. Yeah. We are a national recognized group. We're one of the biggest in the country and we are the experts in our field. So let's own that and offer that. Right. So,
well, I think you said two things that resonate to you for me is that whole thing about, ambition. Ambition, I think that's the thing is that, things are never done in art to me. I mean, it's rare that you ever hear an artist say, this is perfect. It was perfect. Everything about it was perfect. I loved it. Everything was done. Usually it's you're working in collaboration with people. That affects how you work and the piece itself. And that's why people remount things because they go, I have an either idea. And I think it's really important to talk about that as a legacy project, which I also have been talking about with, artists in the fringe circuit, a lot of people are like very much on the professional land, and they have the same kind of process that any artist would have, but also there's opportunity, I think, to if people want to have the kind of different kinds of work, like to go and do things at what I would call a soft theater, like, an actual theater that has more production values than the fringe, and where you're there for whatever, or other ways in which you wish to have your work have a life beyond a fringe show, then I want people to be able to feel that that's accessible to them, right? And I think that's part of it too, is like we talk about access, we talk about the door opening, we talk about, the old but tired but true words like inclusivity, that kind of thing. And it's like, it can be always, sorry, it is always that I'm thinking of in terms of like, not just, it's like, how can our stories be, continue to have a life of their own. Sometimes they have a life of their own because the work's been done before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's been this work done that's crafted this thing. You've had opportunity to talk to people about it. You've had like dramaturgical work, or people who are being your outside eye, or however you express itself to yourself. And then you get to have another opportunity where you go off and it becomes something else, and you allow it to flower and blossom into something else. And then you get to have another opportunity, and it goes because that is a life of art. That is what art does. It inspires, it moves, it changes. We don't just like knock it down. This is it. We're never going to talk about how process happens again. Right. Because the majority of artists spend their lives in process versus performance all the time. Right. So, and I love process, so I'm going to say that out loud. And so how do you make that just available? It's just an easy thing to do.
That's totally why that's why I founded. And I also want to give credit. Like the only reason Stage the Page was able to be founded was because of the support of the Community Arts Council of Vancouver. I used to work there. So they helped me incubate it, and I was working there, and then facilitated the blossoming of it. I think that as young performers, when you first discover, you're like, oh, I want to be on stage. I love that moment of like, lights, people applaud me, cry, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
But the real joy is, I think so many of us go through like, I want to be in the rehearsal space. I want to be in that space of creation to see those magic moments happen, right? Both because they're ephemeral, but also because those are the transformative moments where you see the artist grow, Yeah. I think that it's actually, to respond to what you're saying, it goes back to what you said earlier about, we were talking about earlier about audience, right? I release this in this moment, and now you've been transformed, but you now take it and carry on, and that, that's how the story continues to evolve. And I think also it's important, like, when we think about, some of the amazing shows I've seen at the Fringe, it's meant to be experimental and weird.
Yeah.
And sometimes things are problematic.
Yeah.
And sometimes things are not problematic right now, but then they are later on problematic, because times and people change. And so I think that part of us, did I say that clearly enough? And it's like, I've got tons of poems in my I don't know, canon or whatever, that worked and made sense in the early 2000s, but now it would not be, and we think about understanding that context, changing it, and knowing and being able to frame and see it that way and through those lenses, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's where the discussion comes in, where it's really important to honor it.
Yeah. This has been quite delightful.
Yeah.
I kept taking up a lot of your time.
No.
I think I would really like you to end with one of your poems, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Also, if you want to,
is
there something that we haven't talked about right at this very moment that you would like to express? And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be about poetry. It can just be about where you are in the world, what's happening, anything. I don't really care.
Oh, gosh.
Now I've opened it up. Now your brain's about to implode.
Yeah. We can edit this and make it shorter.
Yeah.
Thank you to Marvin and Ken over there for like sitting with us for an hour. Oh my God, are they done yet? Are they done? Poetry, what? the only thing I'd like to amplify is what you said earlier about Black History Month and any of the months.
Yeah.
Asian Heritage Month is coming up.
Indeed.
Check out exploration.org for a lot of amazing content and programming that's happening across the Pan-Asian diaspora, and specifically manifesting here. But these months are meant to... I don't love the system in how Pride Month, Asian Heritage Month, Black History Month, Indigenous Day, Truth and Reconciliation Day, become capitalistic revenue sources where sometimes artists who would not otherwise get celebrated, it's their time to get out there and get work.
Yeah.
And I know that you are someone who and we share the value why we're friends is that we try to break that mold. And, so to people out there who have the capacity to listen, to be the listeners and the change makers, book artists all year. Really take time to think about curation and think about not just the artists, but who are the voices that could be celebrated, and get them in the space, give them that space and get people to show up. And I think that's my big thing. So our histories are continually growing, and they don't just grow and change in that 1 month, right? So they're happening all year long, all lifelong. So let's keep doing that. Yeah. Oh, I had 2 poems, but I'm going to do this one. Thank you for this time today. Thank you for inviting me. I often say that this poem is a deviation from my normal style because I write a lot of first person stuff, and maybe I'll read you a poem after this, maybe off camera that you can see, or maybe not, who knows. But I want to just give some shine to these lovely artists. The name's Mike Fantis and Emily Fantis. They're on Instagram, and they both do scraping and oil paint. And this is I've been published in a few places, but this is the first time I've been published in an art catalog.
Oh, isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, and so we met, and what's interesting is sometimes there's a style where, when you're scraping and oil painting and whatnot.
I can imagine it, Johnny.
Yeah, so artists often will prime their canvas in white, but there's this trend that Mike and Emily do. They do it in pink. And so there's this is warmth that kind of sneaks through, and I just feel happy. And it's really cool because Mike does a lot of macro shots from what are those things that flow around?
Drones.
Thank you. Or planes.
Yeah.
And where Emily does a lot of really intimate, close shots. And so this is a place-based poem about Vancouver. And so what happened was, in this creation process, they sent me a sneak peek of their gallery. I went and saw their work and just kind of sat with it and meditated on it. Drafted something, then met with them and just talked about it more and learned more about them. And so their exhibition was called Where Lights Meet. And so that's the name of the poem. And so here we go. This is the poem. 1 second. Okay. Where lights meet. Sunlight fractures against skyline, against glass, against ocean, against politics, reflecting a modern archaeology. This body of land, this body of water, this body masked in glass-thin skin waiting to be uncovered. To exhale in the expanse and discover a faraway gaze, see with different eyes, when the journey to find perspectives expose flesh with each abrasion. Warm rose flows, the through line between the vast and the white. What is built? What is born? What storied organism moves between nature and nightlife? How quickly can a colony of light illuminate the underbelly of a bridge? How quickly do shades transform in the company of solar, lunar, neon, electric luminance? Where light meets, sfumato smoke blurs the border between the palette and the knife. The rocky crag and the sky train, this vessel and that verse. Truth laid impasto thick. Truth made in chromatic black. In blackness still a spectrum vacillating, questioning the present at one time, questioning what is true. There are yet colors to be discovered. Tones cut by unseeded stories, unearthed by forest fire red, clouded hues of yellow ochre, a septic sepia from the mega fire in 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Yet, in the alizarin cinder births legacy, reinventing citadels in unplanned escapes through city streets, distant deep breaths embracing Vancouver rain. These stories of the ebb and flow of blood and bones through urban scapes, built by bodies and boats and barrels and billionaires for the benefit of all mankind. And it is we, new seers that see more than human need, from Crow to Prometheus to Erickson to whatever we believe. There is a re-seeing in the retelling of every brush and fire. There is creation in recovery. There is a future in mending what is broken. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love that poem. I was like, oh, yeah.
That's beautiful. That's great.
Yeah, so check out Mike and Emily's work, Mike and Emily Fantuz, Fantuz, and you can get the book from them online and whatever. It's a real joy to work with them, and it's been a joy to be here with all of you.
Thank you, Johnny. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
I'm going to leave it there just because we could go on forever. And I think you actually have a life. I just want to say thank you for everybody for being here. Thanks again to Marvin and Ken and Leap Creative Studios. 2 more things I'd just like to put in the hopper is that we are going to replay all the digital content that we created during the Fringe. We had a live streaming here at Leap Creative, and we're going to be putting those up on sale and up online as of February 15th. We've had a little hitch in the giddy up because we're changing to a new box office system, so it's just been a little late, but we're going to do it from February 15th to March 15th. We are also going to have an online auction that's going to go up in the next couple of weeks, so you'll hear about that. As you know, we're building towards the new next Fringe in September. We're always looking for more funding. We're also looking for volunteers. We're also looking for billeting. You know how this goes. But thank you for tuning in today. Have a wonderful day. And, Fringe on, my friends. And we will see you again in about a month. Thanks so much.